Hey YouTube, this is not going to be a video about how to change the C6 Z06 battery. That's been done many times. You can look on YouTube, on the Corvette forum. There's plenty of tips and tricks on how to do that, since it's a little bit of a pain in the butt with the small space that the batteries fit into in our cars. What I really wanted to talk about today, hopefully quickly, is why I'm changing my battery to this Odyssey 1200. As you know, I got cam and headers and all that kind of good stuff on the engine, typical mods for an LS7. And after I did the cam job, I noticed that when the car was hot, the cranking was definitely slower than when the car was cool or cold. And I talked to the tuner who did my tune, and he said he definitely adjusted those startup tables. He added a little bit of air to make sure that, you know, enough fuel and all that stuff was good in the startup tables. So I trusted him on that. My car does start when it's hot. It just cranks a lot slower. One time it didn't crank, and then I just waited 15 or 20 seconds, you know, after getting gas. So the car was hot and it only sat for a few minutes, and then it did crank. But there are plenty of examples and stories out there of other guys who have done similar mods or more aggressive mods, and their cars just don't crank when it's hot. I read about it recently about a guy who has to leave his car sit for 2 or 3 hours before it'll crank. Either that, or they have to put a jumper on it to effectively double the voltage and amps that, you know, are going through the system to get their car to crank, and that's obviously not good. You don't want to get stranded anywhere. That's kind of a big deal for me, because I do take some longer trips and I don't want to get stuck at a gas station or anything like that. Anyway, I do have my headers coated. I did all of the debugging that I've read about, that I know about. I'm not an expert on the electronics in these cars, but I do know you should check the wiring on the posts of the starter. If your headers aren't wrapped, you should look into a heat shield, or at least testing your starter. That's the first thing you guys should really do if you have problems with starting and cranking, is get it stress tested at AutoZone or wherever. They're easy, free little tests, so I would highly recommend those. My alternator is good. It's a brand new Mechman 240. I don't know exactly what it was. It's the 200 plus version. So everything's good in my electrical system as far as I know. Everything looks good. The posts are good. The wiring's good. So everything's good. So it really comes down to the battery. I've read a really informative post from a guy who said he tried everything he possibly could, had a really good Duralast Gold battery like I got, and the only thing that helped was this Odyssey 1200 battery. What's so different about these? I'm not trying to sell Odyssey to any of you guys or anybody in general. The difference with these batteries, especially these larger ones from Odyssey and one other brand I can't think of right now, is the pulse hot cranking amp rating. Most batteries, you look at the CA or the CCA, the cold amps or the cold cranking amps, and people think that that's the power of the battery, right? If the higher those two numbers, the better the battery is going to be able to start your car. That's true mostly for cold starts, but for hot starts, you should really look at a value called PHCA. And you guys might know about that, but I didn't really know about PHCA. PHCA is basically pulse hot cranking amp. So it's the power it can send, or the pulse amperage it can send when the car is hot. So basically the same situation that we have, right? If you have a modified engine, it's harder to crank over, higher compression, all those things. And when it's hot, you know, your starter pulls a lot more amps. So if you have a higher PHC rating, which this one is 1200, that's where the 1200 number comes from, the odds are it's going to start your car much quicker and with more power than a typical off-the-shelf battery. So it's probably overkill. A lot of you guys probably think I don't need it. Like I said, my old battery worked okay for cranking, but they have to stay charged up too, you know, because these engines and these cars, they do draw power out of the battery if you don't keep them charged up, and especially if you're on a long trip, it's not like you're going to bring your battery maintainer along with you. So anyway, I'm going to throw this guy in and see if it helps my hot crank issues. At least helps it crank faster and more reliably, and if it does, it was a good investment. This battery is like at least $200. I got it from Battery Mart. You got to get the charger with it. Off-the-shelf chargers and maintainers will not keep the battery at 100%. they might charge it up a little bit and keep it maintained to some level, but not the level it needs to be. So this charger is pretty sweet with the monitor, then the lights on it. That tells you exactly what's going on with your battery. So it was this about $400. I had a coupon, so it came out to be like $375 for both of these. For peace of mind though, to me that's worth it. So I'm gonna get this battery in. I'll show you a few tips also on getting the old one out and having to do with the connections and the posts, and we'll get to that next. All right guys, my first tip is to get one of these cordless ratchets and make your life 20 times better. I swear to God, we're gonna get this battery out. Okay, second tip, get one of these battery straps. I know guys use duct tape and all that goofy stuff. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but get one of these battery straps, really. They're like $5. Put it onto the terminals and we're gonna yank this sucker right out. She's out. Easy. Done. All right, Odyssey's in. It's at least an inch or two less wide. Deep, it's probably about the same, but it's definitely smaller. Easier to get in. Didn't even need the strap to get it in. All right, last tip, guys. As you know, the terminal design on these, when you tighten them down onto the battery post, is not very good. These stock terminals, a little bit hard to see, but it basically just is a metal flange that goes around the post, of course. So a tip I found out online is just take a little needle nose pliers like this, a strong one. It's gonna be hard to show two hands here, but grab a hold of the terminal and just bend it inwards just a little bit. So you want it as tight as you can get around the battery posts to have a good connection and a good signal, of course. So if you do that, just go around maybe 7-8 times, just a little bit of a bend. Once you put them on the posts, they're going to be really tight. When I took these off of the old battery, it took a while to jimmy them off because I did bend that, and I'm going to do it again a little bit just to make sure it stays connected to this battery. So that's the last tip.